Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu, salam, rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to We Are All Okay Wednesday, our weekly training session. I'm Catherine Jones, founder of the Back to the Fitrah Mentoring Academy, an emotional and spiritual resilience mentor and coach. Here today to talk about stress and anxiety and how if I didn't wear hijab, I would be pulling my hair out. So have you ever felt stressed and anxious, really to the point that, it felt like, I could tear my hair out? So I have found that we are living in an era of a lot of stress, a lot of tests and challenges, and that we've come to accept that it's normal to feel stressed and anxious, that if we're not feeling stressed and anxious, then there must be something wrong with us. And actually, the reality is that, well, maybe it is normal, but that's not our natural state. Our natural state is not to be stressed and anxious. So it's really important for us to understand the difference between what's normal and what's natural, because so much of what we have going on at this point in time may seem normal, but it may not be our natural state. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Larissa. Good to have you here, and welcome those who are listening. Make sure you shout out, let me know, you send the love to this video to make sure that it gets in front of more people in the group. Invite your friends, the sisters in Islam, to join this group so they can benefit each week from We Are All Okay Wednesday. So as I was saying, that I found that stress and anxiety has become the normal. But I want to share with you that it's not our natural state, and that it's really important for us to differentiate between the norm and the natural. And research actually shows us that 82%, I think it was, I'm doing this statistic from memory, I may have it slightly wrong, but it is definitely up in those high numbers of people who actually understand this have had significant decrease in stress and anxiety in their life, alhamdulillah. And there was a time when, well, let's put it this way, my body is still recovering from the adrenal fatigue from being so stressed out. And there's various, physical conditions that I'm battling from having been so stressed for so long. So I do understand how stressful life can be, and how stressed we can become, how anxious we become, and so we can't sleep at night worrying about what's going to happen, how it's all going to turn out. And the reality has been that through understanding what I'm going to teach you today, that has fallen away, and what it's been replaced with is tawakkul, just being able to put my trust in Allah, being able to really settle into accepting the qadr of Allah, and being able to take things in my stride. So much so that to those who don't understand, and I'm talking about family members now, they seem to think that I'm in some form of denial because I'm not getting so overstressed and over anxious about things, when the reality is it's not denial, it's actually resolution. So today I want to teach you what stress and anxiety really is, and what our natural state really is. So to understand that, we need to go back to the basics, that feelings come from thought in the moment. This is the underlying phrase that is coined in the inside out paradigm, and what the psychological paradigm this understanding is based on. So our feelings come from thought in the moment and nowhere else. The reason we're feeling the way we are in this moment and any moment is to do with how we're thinking about things in this moment. And when we understand that, we realize that the only thing that needs to shift for us to feel better, not stressed and not anxious, because in this case we're talking about stress and anxiety, is for our feelings to move to for our thoughts to move to a different space. When our thinking shifts, so does our experience. So why do we get so stressed and anxious, and why do we get stuck there? So when going back to the normal and the natural, It's absolutely normal to have stressful thoughts and anxious thoughts. We're going to have those thoughts, just like we're going to have loving thoughts, and we're going to have angry thoughts, and we're going to have just neutral thoughts. We're going to have lots of different thoughts that are going to have feelings associated with them. It's how it works. So the thoughts aren't the problem. The stressful thoughts and the anxious thoughts are not a problem. You're going to have them. That is the normal part. That's the natural part. It's going to be natural to experience that. And there's valid reason why we need to experience those thoughts, because sometimes, there's stressful situations where we have to act fast and think fast, for our own safety and well-being. So we've been created this way on purpose. So there's no problem there. We don't need to fix anything. You're not broken. All right? That's the cool news. That's the best news. Where the challenge comes on is when these feelings last and we get caught up in them. We can't sleep. We can't eat. Or we eat too much instead to stuff it down, whichever way, eating too much or too little. We're snappy, cranky, grumpy. We struggle to think clearly. We're making mistakes. All these kind of things are the symptoms because we're holding on to stress or anxious thinking. And that is exactly what it is. And some of it can come from the fact that we get stuck thinking that something needs to change for us to be less stressful or less anxious. That we need to perhaps know how things are going to unfold in order for us to feel less anxious about it. Or we need to, let's pick a parenting example with teenagers, that we need to know every second of every day where our teen is in order for us to actually feel okay. That if we don't know, then we get anxious. Then we get anxious and stressed about whether they're okay. I don't know, go in the chat, tell me the things you get stressed and anxious about, and I'll use those as examples as we go through. Go on, there's several of you here. Put in the chat the things you get stressed and anxious about so I can use them as examples as I unfold this, all right? So the reality is that that is a story that we've created in our own head. So if we go back to the teen one, whether our teen is okay or not is not dependent on whether or not we know what they're doing or that we know whether they're okay or not. It comes from a place of realization that everything is in the hands of Allah. Everything happens according to the qadr of Allah. That if something happens to our teen, for instance, in this example, that's going to happen according to Allah's qadr. And whatever it is, there'll be good in it. And even if we can't see that at the first strike of calamity, there'll be good in it. When we start thinking from this perspective, as they say, in the remembrance of Allah, the hearts find rest, we start to feel at peace. We start to get to the point where we can just get on with things, not dwell on it, think about it all the time. We may have this stressful or anxious thinking pop up, but we don't take it seriously because we remember it's okay, it's in Allah's hands. And maybe we make a dua in that moment when we remember, oh Allah, keep my child safe, keep them, on the deen, whatever it is that we're stressed or worried about. I'm just using this particular example at the moment, and I'll have a look at your examples. Please share them. I saw that Larissa did. We'll go through them in a minute. Please share the things that you get stressed and anxious about so we can unpack them a little. So when we get caught up in the I have to know, otherwise I'm not going to be okay, or my teen has to check in and write to me all the time, because the reality is they don't. And so that's why we end up set up in a stressed and anxious way, because we've set up this expectation and this belief and a story that we've created that we won't be okay unless we know. You know, there's so much that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept from us to not know. And for our own good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us the knowledge of what we need to know when we need to know it. Trusting even that helps us alleviate the stress and anxiety that we feel around not knowing. So not knowing what's going on with someone or what's going to happen can be very stressful and stressful and create anxiety. SubhanAllah. Let me have a look at what we've got going on here. So Larissa says, so I'm just going to pop it on the broadcast so we can see it. Just pop it below me there a bit. Yeah. So Larissa says, my father being unreasonable stresses me out. Okay, people being unreasonable. Let's just make it generic, shall we? People being unreasonable. There's a lot of unreasonable people. I'm sure we've all got someone unreasonable in our life. That stresses us out. Okay. So what is that about? Someone being unreasonable for me now, it's not so stressful because if they're being unreasonable, I just say you're being unreasonable, right? So the thing that stresses us out about unreasonable people is the story we have around that. Now, in this case, it's a father figure. So maybe the thinking is, it's not okay for me to tell a parent that it's unreasonable. Well, actually, it is. It is okay to say that. As long as we say it in a manner that's pleasing to Allah. We're not displeasing Allah by saying, hang on a minute, what you're expecting is unreasonable. What you're saying is unreasonable. Or what you're saying is not okay. What you're asking of me is not okay. All of these things are quite okay to say. It's respectful. It's true. And the reality is that in saying so, we're setting up expectation in a better place, because if we go ahead and try and match the unreasonable request on us, potentially we will make a mess of it, or we will not do a good job, or we will be resentful doing it, and so it ends up not being a good outcome. So being true to ourselves and speaking up is important. So what is the stress here? The stress is perhaps not being able to speak up, not being able, or feeling that it's not possible. Again, that's our thinking. We're having thoughts that are saying, it's not okay for me to say that to my dad, or I can't say that to my dad. Well, that's still a story, because you can. And when that thinking that you have falls away, then it's possible to actually experience your father's unreasonableness without stress. The stress is coming from the way you're thinking about your father's unreasonableness, because perhaps there's thoughts there that you have to succumb to his unreasonableness, that there's no other solution. If you want to add more detail, Larissa, for me to unpack it more, please go for it. Hopefully I've given you some ideas in that one. So this is great. If anyone else has got any other things that they get stressed about, then let's work through them. Okay. So this one is quite long. All right, that oops. Having fun here with my that's not working the right way. I was trying to, oh, now what have I done? Now I need my glasses. I've made it too small. I was trying to shrink it down so it fitted in and we could read it. That's better. Now I can probably read it. Okay, Nazreen says, dealing with my children when they don't want to pray because it's boring. As they say, something. I also get really worried with my teen girl, 13, who is curious about how it would be hanging out with boys and lying to me to find out a way to do it. Okay, good ones. Okay, so I'm going to come back to yours, Larissa. Good additional points. We can unpack those as well. So we've got two here from Nazreen. When children don't want to pray. Okay, so this is a natural thing that children will go through, is anything that the adults ask them to do that they find boring is the resistance to do it. One of the things that is really important that we're often missing when it comes to our kids is sharing with them why praying is so important. And doing that in a way where we're not getting over tense about it. So getting stressed and anxious about that actually can hinder you having the solution to it, because our creative thinking and our ability to have good conversation with our kids to encourage them towards prayer goes out the window when we get stressed about it. So where's the stress coming from? What I have found working with sisters, and you can add your own thoughts in here, but generally the biggest stress comes from being accountable to Allah because my kids aren't praying, right? Let me know if this is ringing true or not. So it's not that the kids are not praying that is the stressor. The stressor is the thinking about what the consequences might be to you if your kids don't pray on the day of judgment, and how accountable you might be, and what might happen to them if they're not praying. And these thoughts is what builds up the stress and anxiety around that situation, right? Instead of us being able to look at the situation for what it really is, and it's a temporary patch in their development where they've disconnected from the prayer, which, by the way, a lot of adults do too, and sometimes we might be just doing the actions for the sake of doing the actions because we're feeling disconnected from the prayer too, and we forget all of that. We just get caught up in the whole, oh my God, my kids aren't praying. What's everyone going to say about my parenting? What's the family going to say? What's the community going to say if my kids aren't praying? What's going to happen to me on the day of judgment? Like all that thinking, that is what's causing the stress. It's hanging on to that thinking that's causing the stress, not that your kids aren't praying. And the more you're stressing like that, the more you're handling it in a way where you're pushing them further away from prayer because you're coming at it in an anxious, stressed way. Whereas if you come at it at a really calm way of sharing with them, not telling them you have to pray or whatever, but just sharing with them, well, especially if they're past puberty, well, it's between you and Allah now because you're past puberty, so it's on your neck whether you pray or not. But let me explain. The prayer is the first thing you're going to be accountable for on the day of judgment. And if your prayer's not good, none of your other good deeds matter. You might as well not bother, right? Educate them. Explain why the prayer is important. Another angle I've taken with my kids. When you're praying, it's like you have a string holding you to Allah. Like there's something tying you to Allah. And so when things aren't going well, Allah's there. And you've got that connection with Allah. And if you decide that you can do it without Allah, and that you're good enough without Allah, and you stop praying, it's like you've cut that string. And now you've got no connection with Allah. You've disconnected. You're on your own. Is that how you want to be? That wisdom, that explanation can come forward when the stressed and anxious thinking falls away. But understanding that the stressed and anxious thinking isn't the child not praying, it's the thinking that you have around the child not praying that's creating that experience. The second one, it's a similar thing. So I have a girl that age. I have a 17-year-old girl, and I've been through that phase with her. And what I have found is that having open and honest conversation with her about the pitfalls, about what can happen, about how boys think, all of these things has helped her understand and choose, to not enter into those sorts of relationships, even though she's at a co-ed public school. So she's adamant, and may Allah protect her and keep her that way. But I found that the more that we try to be strict and stressful in our approach to these topics, the more they will lie and try and work their way around it. And then if she does end up hanging out with a boy or something like that, the other key thing is not to allow our imagination to create a huge story around that means that we come down on her like a ton of bricks and push her away further, because then she will lie more and she will do more because she's felt pushed away, right? Understand that our children are going to stuff up. Our children are going to do things that displease Allah. Why? Well, we do too, don't we? We're human. Humans beings have been created to make mistakes because Allah loves us to repent and turn back to Allah. So what is our job when our child crosses the line? Teach them to repent and turn back to Allah, not to come down on them like a ton of bricks. I'm getting my what do you call them? My sayings all muddled today. So the key thing is to understand that wanting to come down on them like a ton of bricks is coming from a lot of stressful thinking you're having, like, what's everyone going to say? They're going to think we're a bad family. Again, what's Allah going to think? Well, how am I going to, I'm a bad parent. What are my parents going to say? What is my husband going to say? That is that thinking that is creating the stress, not her behavior. Her behavior, again, is something that, if we're living in the West, is to be expected. So we need to be wise in how we handle it, and we can't be wise when we're stressed and anxious about it. So we need to take a deep breath and just let all that thinking settle before we do anything. Because if we do something while that thinking is all happening, then we're not actually going to succeed in a wise way with our kids, and we'll push them away and they will do worse, and they will hide it more and they will lie more. My kids, they've gone off the rails. They've done plenty of things that probably people in the Ummah do know about, and that's probably why, locally, sometimes I struggle in the work that I do in getting it out there locally. It may not be, Allah knows best. I'm not getting stressed and anxious about it and creating a story around it. But I don't care. I don't care if people don't want to benefit from what I can teach because my children have made mistakes. Then they haven't actually known what's going on in this family, and they're judging, and they're not my judge. Allah is. My children who have gone off the rails are now very passionate about worshipping Allah because they've chosen to do so. Because they have made a choice now as adolescents to do the right thing, because they've realized that doing the wrong thing led them in a really bad way. They learned from their experience. I was their ally through it. I taught them how to repent and turn back to Allah through their mistakes instead of coming down hard on them. Because coming down hard on them, they probably wouldn't have turned back to Allah. They would probably be now out there doing worse. And I'm not saying that from assumption. I'm saying that from what I have seen with some of the families I've worked with here locally who did come down hard on their kids. They've gone further away from Allah, and these were kids that were very close to Allah first. So it's us first. It's us first. Our children, as Amy's saying, because we're all human, our children are young humans. They are human beings with less capacity to get it right than we are. We make mistakes. We expect people to forgive us. We don't like it if people come down hard on us. And we want to be able to turn back to Allah and have everybody accept that we've done that. So why can't we do that for our young people who are more inclined and likely to make mistakes, subhanAllah, than us as adults who have a better capacity to make better decisions, subhanAllah. So I hope that's been a little bit helpful. Let me now go. There's been lots of messages popping up, so I'm going to go work my way through them. Okay, up here. So Larissa says, this is back to her dad being unreasonable. He'll disagree with me telling him he's being that he's being unreasonable, and he will gaslight, telling me I'm imagining it. So here's the thing, Larissa. The more you see the story he's creating, the more you see the story you're creating, the more his gaslighting is not going to work. So at the moment, the reason you're stressed and anxious is because you're buying into his story. You're not, even though your intuition and your gut is he's not right, you're buying into his story. And then you're creating your story and getting stressed around it, but it's all stories. When you see it for what it really is, when you see him for what he's really doing, and it doesn't, doesn't settle in, like you don't allow that story to take hold, you'll no longer find that stressful. And in fact, what you can end up doing is like calling their bluff. So sometimes with their gaslighting, it comes with a kind of, like, it's like a subtle threat. It's not a threat, but it's like an underlying threat. And you'll just call their bluff and discover, oh, it really was a bluff. And then the more you have those experiences, even more you'll not fall for the story that's going on. That's all that's happening, subhanAllah, Larissa. Okay, we've got here. So Nazreen says, and I worry that if I let it go, because sometimes they say that they are doing it just for me. I have discussed reasons why we pray in a loving way. We have attended classes about reasons for why we pray, but they're going to have to find their own way. Because at the end of the day, whether our children end up true believers or not is in Allah's hands and was already written before we gave birth to them. And our job is to do our best to educate them and guide them and direct them and show up in the best way for them. But at the end of the day, if they choose to take a different path, as long as we have done our bit, we're not accountable for that. That's between them and Allah. We're not accountable for another person's sin, even our children. So our job is to show up in the best way we can. So what I'm teaching you right now is the best way you can show up. You do your best. What you've been doing is great. Keep going with that. And helping them connect the dots. So, for instance, my 19-year-old, every so often he gets a bit lazy with prayer, like we'll miss one here or there or something like that. Then things go off the rails. And instead of giving him a lecture, instead of trying to fix it, I just ask him a simple question like, what do you think might be behind that? And usually he goes, I haven't been praying on time or something like that. He'll connect the dots. And then he'll choose to come back. And that's so much more powerful than me telling him, well, I noticed you haven't been praying on time. Maybe that's it. We've got to learn to be wiser ourselves in how we tackle these things. And then our kids can have their own critical thinking. And if they choose to do it, isn't that better than anything in this world? SubhanAllah. And sometimes they might choose not to. Okay, that's between them and Allah, especially if they've, already passed puberty. And we're keeping on reminding them that, you know what, I'm here to remind you, but in the day of judgment, you know what, it's between you and Allah. It keeps putting it back to them and up to them. Okay, so there's lots of comments here of loving some of the things I was saying. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad that you did. Make sure that you're inviting people to this group to benefit from these sessions, because they really, I am trying my best to really provide you something very meaningful and beneficial here. I do want this to be a learning platform, and so invite others to join the group, and make sure you put lots of love for this video so that Facebook will actually share it with other members of the group, because the way the algorithms work is the more engagement a video has, the more Facebook share it with other people. So the more you send love hearts, the more you comment, the more you we can't share this video because it's just for in the group, but it's mostly commenting and spreading the love, and inviting your friends in the group and tagging them in this if you think that this is something that they could really benefit from. There you go. I can see the love coming in. Keep it up, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, I'm glad that you're seeing that this advice is spot on. Trying to let go and shift my thinking. The more you understand that your feelings are coming from thought in the moment, the more your thinking will shift by itself. Your natural state. So I really want to go back to the point I started with. Our natural state is to not be stressed and anxious. Our natural state is to trust Allah and accept the qadr of Allah. That is our natural state. Our normal state that we seem to be experiencing in this era is stress and anxiety. But normal doesn't mean natural, and I want to separate the two. So your natural state is a one of calm and not stress and not anxiety. So subhanallah. So alhamdulillah, this is so the more you understand that, the more that thinking will shift and the more you will let go, and it's not a case of you having to consciously do it. It will shift by itself, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Amina. Oh, so Console, I'm glad you can hear now, alhamdulillah. So Amy says, feelings related to needing something, either chores or work, to be done in a specific way or by a certain time for myself or others. Yeah, that can get stressful, can't it? It's been really interesting having my own office space, because I have a space now that's my space, that when I leave it at the end of the day, when I come back in the morning, everything's just how I left it. SubhanAllah. Nothing moves. Everything's where it's supposed to be. I can find everything I want. I've come to realize I'm actually quite a neat and tidy person. But at my house, it's a completely different story. And I used to get really stressed and anxious about everything being messy all the time and not keeping up. But the thing is, all it was doing was making me sick. So for instance, now that I work in an office during the week, the house just gets accumulatively worse over the week. And then I spend Saturday and Sunday pulling it all back together. And this week, when I got home Monday evening, it's like everything I had done had been undone. And there was a moment, and this is how it works, where stressed thinking popped in. I started going down a thinking path of, well, that's not fair. Why should I spend my free time cleaning this up after this family when, you know, I'm the one providing for them, and then they stay home and just make mess, right? Because I've got various kids at various stages doing various things, and so they're home during the day because maybe their classes are at night, or I've got one that's in COVID-19 lockdown because he decided to travel and didn't look into the laws and got caught by the police, and now for 14 days he's not allowed to leave the house. So there's all sorts of different things going on. That means that there's bodies at the house making mess while I'm here busy working, trying to provide for them, right? So I could have lots of stressful and anxious thinking about all of that, but I go, you know what? I've got my nice office to come to, and I can just have neat and tidy as here. And so I've been able to look beyond things having to be a specific way in order for me to be okay, because it doesn't work that way. So there's thinking behind that, Amy. And the thinking could be thinking that we have developed from our parents because that was the way our parents were. I really do feel that we inherit a lot of thinking from our parents, because I really do have this ingrained kind of thing that Saturday morning is cleaning morning. And I do sometimes get frustrated because I get up Saturday morning, it's like, right, get this house together. Everyone, come on, get this house together. And no one else is in like this mode of Saturday morning should be cleaning morning. To them, it's like Saturday morning is like, we don't have school today, I want a chill morning. But the routine when I grew up was we all had to pitch in and we had our jobs to do on a Saturday morning, right? So I've inherited this this thinking around Saturday mornings being clean-up times. I haven't passed that thinking on to my children because I haven't had it as a specific routine, because I've been working from home for years, and so I didn't have a Monday to Friday out of the house kind of routine. It was always cleaning up all through the week. So now that I've gone back into out of the house Monday to Friday, and Saturday is like my first day back in the house and it's a mess and I want it tidy, if I have an expectation that everybody needs to jump on that bandwagon, they haven't been trained for that. I have, because I was trained for it all my life by my mother. And so I could get so worked up, not knowing, not understanding that, worked up into the whole, well, this isn't fair, why doesn't anyone get it? And I could have so much stress and anxiety over the fact that no one wants to participate in my manic routine on a Saturday morning. But because I understand this, I get that that's why I want to do it at that time, and I get why they have their thinking, why they don't want to do it, and how I haven't trained them. So having that expectation is unrealistic and leads to more just stress and anxiety on my part. So you see how it's not the situation, it's our thinking that is creating our stress and anxiety and hanging on to that. So I hope that helped you maybe discover a little bit about your thinking, Amy. So Aziza says, can you talk about the feeling that comes from the fact that being excluded or rejected when it is not a thing I thought, but a thing that happened? I can imagine that the feeling comes from the thought that they don't love me and I'm not enough, or blah, blah. If we could just frame it as blah, blah and let it go, that would be so much easier, wouldn't it? But it is kind of like that, actually. And you're spot on. You're spot on. So we've been having this conversation in the converts group. So I'm running a support group for converts weekly. And we've been talking about the fact that converts get excluded from the Ummah, and looking at how can we be part of the solution instead of being excluded. How can we include ourselves? How can we assert ourselves into the Ummah? And so we've kind of discussed some of this and realized that there's two sides to these coins. If we're excluded, there could be many reasons why, and one of them could simply be that in that moment when someone was thinking up who to invite or who to include, that they didn't think of that person, they didn't think of us in that moment, and it's not because they don't care, and it's not because we're not good enough, it's because in that moment we just didn't pop into their mind. Now, I can tell you I've had those thoughts sometimes. You know, there's sometimes these posts where people say, let's show gratitude to the people who have really helped us in our lives. And you see those gratitude posts and you've been tagged on them because, you know, some of your clients, for instance, have tagged you as being one of the people that have been helpful on their journey to whatever. But then you'll see another one of your clients on there and they've thanked all these other people and they forgot you, and you go, so what I did with them wasn't good enough, or they didn't like my work with them. You know, I'm just using this as an example because I remember noticing a few of those thoughts pop in, and then I went, come on, you know how you know how important your work is, and I didn't have to talk myself out of it. The thought just shifted, but that's how it pops up. So you're absolutely right. It's these thoughts that pop up, and the story we create around it. So the reason I have now see it as a different way is that maybe that my name didn't pop up in their mind is because sometimes when I'm responding to those types of posts, the people that I've seen recently or connected with recently will automatically pop up in my mind, but others who I haven't seen recently or had contact with recently may not pop up into my mind. And it's not that I don't care about them, and it's not that it's minimizing the impact they've had on my life or the gratitude I feel towards them. It's just that I just haven't had a recent connection with them. And so they're not in the forefront of my mind. They're in there, but they're not in that forefront of my mind. But I could create a story around, you could create a story around that. Like, wow, so all that extra time I put in with that person and they didn't even value that to even say thank you, And I could get myself really depressed if someone didn't mention my name, excluded me. But it's my story, and it's an assumption. It's completely our own fiction. Unless they say, I'm not including you because, and then you have your reason, and then you can deal with whatever feelings you have around that. The rest is a story we've created, an assumption we've made ourselves, that it is a rejection. It may not be a rejection, and it may not be a purposeful exclusion. It may be just an oversight. And that, and when we stop putting a story in it and we see ourselves left out of something, there's more of an opportunity for us to actually go, hey, I'd actually like to be a part of that. Is it all right if I come along? Or is it all right if I participate? And then there's opportunity for them to say, oh, sure, yeah, I should have invited you. I'm so sorry. And then you'll realize that it was just an oversight, right? Or they will say, actually, I didn't invite you because, and then you'll know the real reason, and then you can have your feelings about whatever the real reason is. But having big upsets over our stories we've created, the assumptions we've made, we're only hurting ourselves. And we're preventing ourselves stepping forward and potentially actually being a part of something that we want to be a part of by simply just speaking up. That's what happens when the thinking settles and we stop having big emotional responses to these things. We actually just look at it and firstly go, well, actually, do I really want to be involved? Because there's quite a few times when I've done that and I've gone, well, actually, no, I'm glad I'm not invited, because actually if they did invite me, I think the answer would be I don't want to go. And then I'd have an awkward situation of actually telling them, no, sorry, I don't want to go. So I just leave it alone. Or if it's something I really want to be a part of, I'm cheeky enough to I just send someone a message and go, hey, I see you doing this. Can I come? Can I participate? So I tell you, there was, here's a good example, and I got a no as a response, and that was fine. So Joseph Bailey is one of the people who studied directly in connection with Sydney Banks around the Inside Out paradigm. He interviewed me for his book. I don't know whether he includes my interview in his book or not, because his book hasn't come out yet. But because we had a connection when we did a book review, we have a book club, and he was the person that came and he was talking about his new book, and in there I volunteered to share my transformation story, because it's a book of transformation stories. So he interviewed me for his transformation story. He was really impressed with my story and what I do and everything. So anyway, he's running a conference. It should have already happened, but because of COVID-19, it's been delayed later in the year, on addiction, because that's his thing, is about addiction. And so I wrote to him and I said, if you haven't, that I'd really love to be a speaker at your conference. What I want to talk about is how we can parent differently to set our children up not to be susceptible to addiction. And there was a part of me, a little arrogant part of me that was going on there in that moment, that thought, I'm a good speaker, he should have me in his conference, I know what I'm talking about, and all this sort of thing. But he wrote back and said, no, I've got everybody sorted. It was a very nice email. It wasn't a promise of anything in the future either. It was just a straight no. I had a few thoughts of disappointment, and then I moved on. But the thing was I firstly didn't have thinking about how I'd had this connection with him. Why didn't he invite me? I just went straight ahead and wrote and said I'd love to be a part of it. I got a rejection. That's okay. Had my feelings around it, very short-lived feelings, and then moved on, and I was okay. So I hope that that helps Aziza with that particular situation. Amy says, also feelings with trying to be on time for something like drop-offs, pickups, meetups, and feelings related to not being late due to myself and others. Do you know what, Amy? I used to worry about that all the time. I used to be like this massive stress head in the morning, getting everyone up, getting everyone ready. It's like, you know the racing commentators when there's a horse race and they're off. That was kind of like me in the mornings trying to get everyone out the door, you know. Now it's like I don't even look at the clock most of the time. Firstly, my internal clock's pretty good, so I kind of know how far time goes. And I just connect and work with my team of kids towards the door. So it's kind of like, have you done this? Okay, we're up to that. Come on, we've got to go and fight. And it's just kind of like flows. And then when the first time, quite often, the first time I actually really look at the clock is when I turn the car on and the clock pops up and I go, oh yeah, wow, plenty of time. Sometimes I get there and we go, oops, we took a little bit longer than I thought and we're a bit late. But what I have found is that the stressing around it actually slows the process down, and that the actual acceptance that every so often we'll be late, but most of the time we'll be on time, and let's just do this, actually means that most of the time we're on time and we're only occasionally late. Whereas before, we were late all the time. And why? Because I was coming from this space of stress, and so that would set my kids off, and so then there would be like power struggles and all sorts of things going on, getting everyone out the door. Now there's not. Everybody just gets ready and we go. They are getting older too, but our state of mind is key in it. So it's like a catch-22. If you're stressed about being late, you're actually most likely going to end up creating the environment that will make you late. Hope that makes sense. Aziz says, SubhanAllah, how many times we understand we have the insights and we forget again and jump again into the thoughts and we lose ourselves again. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Yeah, exactly. As long as we notice again and jump back out again, it's all cool, right? That's how Allah designed us, that sometimes we'll see it and sometimes we won't. SubhanAllah. What a cool discussion we've had. I've run out of things to read on the comments here. SubhanAllah. This has been a brilliant conversation and a very long session, actually. We've been going for 50 minutes. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So, what I would love everyone to do, if you don't mind, because this is good for you and for me, what is your takeaway from this session? I'd like everybody who's here and everybody who's listening to the replay to share a takeaway. Once you've shared your takeaway, I want you to do lots of love hearts here so that this video gets shared with more people in the group, because there's a lot of people in this group, but not many people will get access to this video in their news feed because it's limited. It depends how much engagement. Now, we've had a bit of engagement here, so hopefully this will get shared more. I think it's a really important topic. You guys have shown me in your comments that it's a really important topic. Invite others to the group, spread love, share your insights and takeaways on here, even if it's the replay. It's really important, inshallah. And don't forget to register for our online conference, which is backtothefitrahconference.com. You'll see the link is on the screen, because you're going to get a heap more insight into our human experience through this conference, hearing from the certified mentors and coaches of the Back to Fitrah Academy as they speak about their various topics. And the topics will be released very soon. I'm just finalizing things for my admin team to add it all onto the page. At the moment you won't see so much of the topics, but we have them all now, and I'll be uploading all of that in the next few days, inshallah. Amazing stuff we're going to be covering, so yeah, please register for that to make sure that you are a part of it, inshallah. So Amy says, feelings with the many things to be completed in the mornings, day, etc., and it not getting it done in the day. Is that your takeaway? I didn't quite get it, but I'm guessing what you're saying is that your feelings are the things that are getting in the way of you actually getting the things done in the day. Oh, look, that rhymes. We can start some poetry. Yeah, listen to it again, and then you can share your takeaway if you want. Oh, okay, you're rephrasing them. Okay, so I was trying to read it from the perspective of a takeaway. That's probably why I was feeling challenged by it. Alhamdulillah. Yes, please share your takeaways. If you want to go back to the beginning and listen again and share a takeaway, that's fine. Share the love. Invite others to the group, please. We will have another topic next week. Don't ask me what it is. We already know what it is, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Okay, Aziza says, my takeaway is that I'm understanding every day more the inside out paradigm, alhamdulillah, because, I was fighting a little about it. It couldn't be that easy. Yes, I know. And you know what, Aziza, it comes from your training. You've already been trained to think about it a different way. So what I am telling you goes against your training, but I can assure you that even Joseph Bailey, who I mentioned earlier, is a certified. He's a psychologist. He's a psychologist. There are psychiatrists and psychologists all through the Inside Out Paradigm community who have all said this is it, even though they've had many PhDs and all sorts in psychology. But I get it. Even amongst some of my certified coaches and mentors, they've come from counseling training and CBT and emotional therapy and different types of psychology degrees and things like that. So I get it, how it can be a challenge. I had a challenge at the beginning because I came from a modality which is like emotional therapy. I also came from understanding neuroscience, from attending courses and reading books by Dan Siegel. And so it sometimes takes a little time when we've got this other knowledge. It can be a little bit of a barrier. So I'm glad that you're starting to see through it, Aziza. Inshallah, you'll get it and you will understand and be able to apply it even in the work that you do with your clients, inshallah. Any other takeaways? I can see that one of my admin team is posting the conference link in the comments, so you can just click on that link, much easier than typing it, to register for the conference. So make sure that you do that. Alhamdulillah. What a cool session. This was amazing. So I am absolutely looking forward to next week and seeing you on at the same time. Look out. The events are probably already in the group, so you can check what next week's topic is, see if it's something that you're interested in. Go back through the group and find all the other Wednesday topics I've done. It's all coming from what people say when they join the group. You know how we ask the questions when you join the group? We take that information and then I decide what to talk about here in the group based upon what people are sharing when they join the group of what they need. So I'm trying to address what you need, inshallah. All right, sisters, I'm off. I've got about an hour to move around a little bit before I've got to sit down again and do another couple of hours of coaching. So I need to move around and get the blood flowing again. It's freezing here. So subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Don't forget, wayaki Amina. Don't forget, invite your friends in here. spread the love by sharing your comments, your takeaways on this post, and doing lots of love hearts, and then that way more people will benefit, and inshallah you'll get the reward of their benefit without reducing, you know, the reward of their own effort. Alhamdulillah. Wa yahya me. All right, I'm off. Assalamu alaikum.